I came home carrying a gift bag and 2 cruise tickets for my parents, and found my entire life stuffed into trash bags on the porch. At first, I honestly thought it was some kind of mistake. Then my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your sister actually has a future. You're almost 30 and still wasting space in my house." I remember the cold more than anything else. Not just outside. Inside me too. The kind of cold that hits when someone finally says out loud what they've secretly felt about you for years. I stood there frozen while my stepmother folded her arms like she was proud of herself. Behind her, my old bedroom door was open. Except it wasn't my room anymore. The walls had been painted bright pink overnight. My desk was gone. My books were gone. Ring lights and camera equipment filled the space instead. My younger sister had turned my room into a social media studio. And apparently nobody thought I deserved a warning. I looked down at the cruise tickets in my hand. I'd spent weeks saving for that trip. It was supposed to be a surprise anniversary gift for my parents. My father didn't even ask what the envelope was. He just pointed toward the driveway. "Take your junk and go." No yelling. No dramatic speech. Honestly, that hurt worse, because it sounded rehearsed. Like they'd already talked about this before I got there. I didn't cry in front of them. That's the strange thing about heartbreak. Sometimes it's too big for tears. I quietly placed the envelope on the hallway table, picked up the trash bags filled with my clothes, and walked out into the snow without another word. And the second I shut the front door behind me, I realized I didn't actually have anywhere to go. If you've ever felt unwanted in your own home, you probably understand that feeling. That numb kind of panic. Like your chest caves in while your brain keeps pretending everything's fine. I drove for almost an hour through freezing weather before finding a rundown motel off the highway. The neon sign outside flickered so badly it barely looked open. Perfect for me, honestly. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the stained carpet while the heater rattled loud enough to keep me awake. That's when my mind went backward. Because none of this really started that night. It started when I was 5 years old. My father used to remind me of it constantly. One morning, he was supposed to attend some investment meeting with his business friends, but I woke up sick. Really sick. My fever got so high I ended up in the emergency room. He missed the meeting because of me. That company later exploded into a billion-dollar success. And somehow, in his mind, I stole that future from him. For years, he'd joke about it in front of people. "Most kids cost money," he'd laugh. "This one cost me millions." Everyone else would chuckle awkwardly. But he wasn't joking. Not really. As I got older, the resentment became normal in our house. I paid rent starting at 16. Bought my own groceries. Paid utility bills. Meanwhile, my younger sister got everything handed to her because she was going places. New phone? Of course. Luxury skincare? Naturally. Professional photo shoots because she wanted to become an influencer? Guess who paid for those? Me. I worked constantly while she filmed makeup. Videos in the kitchen pretending we lived some glamorous lifestyle. And somehow I was still treated like the disappointment. That's the part nobody knew, though. My family thought I was barely surviving. I let them think that on purpose. They saw oversized hoodies, old sneakers, messy hair, and an aging car. What they didn't see were the accounts. The contracts. The clients. The money. I worked in financial recovery consulting. Basically, when investors suspected a company was hiding money or committing fraud, they hired people like me to quietly uncover the truth. I wasn't just good at it. I was one of the best. Most of my work involved executives, lying through polished smiles while pretending their collapsing companies were healthy. Funny enough, that skill translated perfectly to family, but what happened next changed everything. Around midnight, I reached for my laptop bag beside the motel bed, and my stomach dropped instantly. The laptop was gone. Not just any laptop. That computer held encrypted client files worth more than most houses. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then instinct kicked in. I opened the tracking app on my phone and waited. The signal appeared almost immediately. Not at my parents' house. At a pawn shop downtown. I just stared at the screen in disbelief. My own family had thrown me out. Then pawned my work computer before I even realized it was missing. I drove there immediately. The streets were covered in dirty slush by then. The kind that splashes gray water onto your doors. The pawn shop owner barely looked at me when I explained the situation. "Need the ticket," he muttered. So I went back outside and tore through the garbage bags my family had packed for me. That moment broke something inside me more than the eviction did. Because they hadn't packed my things carefully. They dumped my life into trash bags like I was already garbage to them. I found the pawn slip crumpled inside an old hoodie pocket. And yes, I had to pay to buy back my own laptop. I sat in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. Then another notification appeared on my phone. Vehicle ownership transfer completed. I frowned. My car had been sold. I actually laughed at first because it sounded impossible. Then I checked the timestamp. My father sold my car online while I was driving it to their house earlier that night. He still had the spare key. He probably handed it over while I was inside getting kicked out. I called my stepmother immediately. She answered, sounding irritated, like I was bothering her. You pawned my laptop and sold my car? She sighed dramatically. We raised you for 18 years. Consider it repayment. Repayment. That word echoed in my head long after the call ended. Not love, not family. Not concern. Debt. That's all I had ever been to them. A debt. And right there in that freezing parking lot, something inside me changed. Not anger. Anger burns hot and disappears fast. This was colder than that. Clearer. I opened my recovered laptop slowly and logged into my work systems. If my family wanted to treat me like an enemy, fine. But they forgot one important thing. I investigate people for a living, and I suddenly had a very strong reason to start investigating them. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the exact moment their entire world started collapsing. The motel room smelled like dust, old coffee, and bad decisions. I sat there all night with my laptop open, staring at numbers while snow hit the window hard enough to sound like tiny rocks. Most people cry after betrayal. I start digging. That's just how my brain works. And the deeper I looked into my family's finances, the worse it got. At first, I only wanted proof about my car. I tracked the payment trail from the online sale within 20 minutes. The money hadn't gone toward bills, or debt, or groceries. No. My father used it to pay a luxury event planner. Apparently, my sister needed a giant launch party for her brand. I leaned back slowly in the motel chair and laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. They sold my transportation to fund a champagne tower for a girl who barely got 1,000 views per video. That's when everything shifted. Until then, part of me still wanted to believe they were desperate, that maybe money problems had made them cruel. But this was greed. Pure greed. And once I accepted that, I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like an auditor. I pulled deeper records. Mortgage history, credit activity, refinancing applications. Within an hour, I found the truth. My family wasn't struggling. They were drowning. The house had been refinanced multiple times. Credit cards maxed out, late notices everywhere, and sitting quietly at the center of it all, foreclosure paperwork. I stared at the screen for a long time after that, because suddenly their behavior made perfect sense. The pressure. The obsession with my sister becoming famous. The constant demands for money. They weren't building a future. They were trying to outrun collapse. But what really caught my attention was the newest loan application. Something about it felt off immediately. The income numbers were inflated. Wildly inflated. My father claimed earnings that didn't exist. And my sister? According to the application, she was supposedly making more money from social media partnerships than some actual celebrities. I almost choked laughing. She couldn't even afford her own groceries without borrowing money from people. And yet somehow she was claiming six-figure sponsorships. That's federal fraud. Not exaggeration. Not stretching the truth. Actual fraud. I sat there listening to the motel heater struggle while one thought repeated in my mind over and over. They destroyed my life for money, while lying to banks for more of it. And honestly, that hurt more than getting kicked out, because I realized something ugly. They never saw me as family. I was just the stable one, the reliable one, the backup wallet, the person they could drain while chasing fantasies. If you've ever been the responsible child in a dysfunctional family, you know exactly what I mean. People stop loving you properly once they decide you'll always stay no matter how badly they treat you. But I wasn't staying anymore. Around 3 a.m., I called someone I trusted. A corporate attorney named Marcus. We'd worked together before on several high-level cases involving financial fraud. He answered, sounding half asleep. You realize normal people rest at night, right? I need a shell company, I said immediately. Silence. Then his tone changed completely. What happened? I looked toward the motel window. Snow kept falling in heavy sheets under the parking lot lights. My family made a mistake, I said quietly, and I think they're about to make another one. By sunrise, the plan had already started forming. Marcus created an investment company that looked legitimate on paper. Private funding, distressed asset recovery, luxury portfolio acquisitions. Exactly the kind of thing desperate people fall for. Especially greedy, desperate people. Then came the bait. Marcus contacted my father pretending to represent wealthy investors interested in supporting rising digital talent. The second he mentioned my sister's online presence, my father practically tripped over himself responding. It was embarrassing. Watching those emails come in felt like watching a man drown while insisting he was swimming. He bragged constantly about my sister's future, about their business opportunities, about the house value. Lie after lie after lie. And the craziest part? I honestly think he believed them himself. That's the dangerous thing about delusional people. Eventually, they stop hearing reality altogether. But what happened next honestly shocked even me. Marcus requested supporting financial documents for the investment review. My father sent everything. Immediately. No hesitation. No caution, nothing. Just attachment after attachment. Tax forms, income statements, debt disclosures. And buried inside those files was the weapon I didn't even know I needed. A falsified loan application signed by both my father and sister. I stared at the document while my pulse pounded in my ears. There it was. Fake income claims, manipulated assets, completely fabricated revenue numbers. Enough evidence to destroy them federally. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired, because seeing it written down made everything painfully real. These people weren't just selfish. They were willing to commit crimes to maintain appearances, to protect an illusion. And somehow, I was still the failure in the family. I closed my eyes for a second and remembered all the nights. I skipped meals to afford rent they charged me. All the birthdays they forgot. All the insults disguised as jokes. All the times my sister laughed while they humiliated me at the dinner table. And suddenly, I stopped feeling guilty. Completely. That guilt had followed me my entire life. The guilt of not being good enough. Pretty enough. Successful enough. Easy enough to love. But sitting there in that freezing motel room, I finally understood something. Healthy families don't keep score. Healthy parents don't punish children for existing. And healthy love never sounds like debt collection. By the next afternoon, Marcus scheduled a formal meeting with them. He pitched it as a massive private investment opportunity, an exclusive partnership, money upfront, debt relief, brand expansion, everything my family was desperate to hear. My father accepted within minutes. Of course he did. Greedy people can smell rescue before they smell danger. The meeting was set for Friday morning at a downtown law office. And according to Marcus, my sister was already bragging online about major business moves. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I slowly closed the laptop. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of them anymore. They thought they were walking into the biggest opportunity of their lives. They had no idea they were walking into an audit. And audits don't care about feelings. Friday morning arrived gray and freezing. The kind of cold that makes the whole city feel emotionally exhausted. I parked across from the law office and sat there for a minute watching people rush down the sidewalks with coffee cups in their hands. Normal people, normal mornings. Meanwhile, my entire family was about to walk into a disaster they created themselves. I checked my reflection in the mirror one last time. For years, my family mocked how I looked. Too plain, too quiet, too invisible. That morning, I wore a tailored black suit, my hair pulled back clean and sharp. Not to impress them, to remind myself who I actually was. Because people treat you differently the second confidence becomes visible. And honestly, that realization hurt too. Marcus met me upstairs near the conference room. "You ready for this?" he asked quietly. I thought about it for a second. "No," I admitted, "but I'm done running from them." He nodded once and handed me the finalized documents. Everything was legal. Everything airtight. They had signed every trap themselves. All because they smelled money. The conference room had dark wood walls and massive windows overlooking downtown traffic. I stayed hidden in the adjacent office while security cameras displayed the room on a monitor. At exactly 10:03 a.m., my family arrived. My father walked in first, smiling like he already owned the building. My stepmother followed, carrying a designer purse she definitely couldn't afford. And my sister? She spent the first 5 minutes taking selfies. I wish I were joking. Even during a high-level financial meeting, she was still obsessed with angles and filters. Marcus greeted them warmly and offered drinks. My father immediately started bragging about future opportunities, about my sister's brand growth, about expanding investments. Every sentence sounded more ridiculous than the last. But the worst part? They genuinely believed they deserved success while destroying everyone around them. That's the scary thing about entitlement. Eventually, people stop seeing others as human beings. They only see resources. Then Marcus slid the paperwork across the table. And without reading carefully, my father signed. So did my stepmother. My sister signed as witness while texting on her phone. 3 signatures. That was it. 3 careless signatures built entirely on greed. Marcus calmly organized the papers, then looked toward the door. Our lead investor would like to meet you personally, he said. My father grinned instantly. Finally, he laughed. I like dealing face-to-face with serious people. Marcus opened the conference room door, and I walked in. The silence hit immediately. My father's smile disappeared so fast it almost looked painful. My stepmother blinked repeatedly, like her brain couldn't process what she was seeing, and my sister slowly lowered her phone. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. I walked calmly to the end of the table and placed my folder down carefully. You? My father finally said. His voice cracked. Not angry yet. Confused. How are you even here? I looked directly at him. I own the company. The room went completely still. You could actually hear the projector humming softly near the wall. My father laughed nervously. At first, he genuinely thought it was a joke. Then Marcus placed the finalized deed transfer in front of him. And the color drained from his face. What is this? A legal transfer agreement, Marcus answered calmly. Triggered by fraudulent financial disclosures. My father's hand started shaking as he flipped pages. No, this was an investment deal. It was, I interrupted softly. And you failed the audit? My sister looked back and forth between us, completely lost. My stepmother suddenly stood up. You tricked us! The irony of that almost made me smile. For years, they manipulated me emotionally, financially, mentally, but suddenly deception was wrong when it happened to them. Interesting how that works. I opened the loan application slowly and turned it toward them. Highlighted income claims glowed bright yellow across the page. Fake numbers. Fake assets. Fake sponsorship earnings. All signed legally. All I did, I said quietly, was verify the information you provided. Nobody moved. My father looked like he couldn't breathe. You wouldn't destroy your own family, he whispered. And honestly, that sentence changed something in me forever. Because suddenly I realized he truly believed he was the victim. Not after stealing from me. Not after humiliating me. Not after throwing me into a snowstorm with trash bags full of clothes. No. According to him, I became the monster the second I stopped accepting abuse quietly. That's when I finally understood something most people learn way too late. Some people only call you family when they still control you. I leaned forward slightly. You sold my car for party money, I said. You pawned my work equipment. You charged your teenage daughter. Rent while funding fake influencer dreams. I paused. And somehow I'm still the selfish one? Nobody answered. Because there wasn't an answer. Just silence. Heavy silence. The kind that forces people to finally sit with themselves. Then Marcus calmly explained the situation. The fraudulent application automatically triggered default clauses. Ownership of the property transferred legally through the signed agreements. And if necessary, the evidence could also be forwarded for federal investigation. My father collapsed back into his chair like his bones stopped working. My stepmother started crying immediately. My sister just stared at me in shock. For once in her life, there was no camera filter strong enough to fix reality. I gave them 2 weeks to leave the house. Not because they deserved kindness, because I deserved peace. That distinction matters. Revenge feels good for a moment. Freedom feels good forever. And honestly, walking away without screaming was the most powerful thing I've ever done. Over the next few weeks, everything unraveled fast. The house sold shortly after. My father ended up taking a low-paying retail job after nobody would approve. him for financing anymore. My stepmother disappeared from social circles almost overnight once the money vanished. And my sister? Her followers slowly faded the second the luxury lifestyle disappeared. Turns out fake success is expensive to maintain. But the strangest part of all this? I didn't feel happy afterward. Not immediately. I felt empty. Because when you spend your entire life begging people to love you, it's painful realizing they never planned to. Healing came later. Slowly, quietly. I bought a small house near the water months later. Nothing flashy, nothing performative. Just peaceful. For the first time in my life, I decorated a space without worrying who would criticize it. I started sleeping better, eating better, breathing better. And one night while unpacking boxes, I found the old cruise tickets I'd bought for my parents, still unopened. I stared at them for a long time before throwing them away. Not angrily, just finally understanding something. Love should never cost your self-respect. And being related to someone does not give them permanent access to your peace. If you've ever spent years trying to earn love from people determined not to give it, I hope you hear this clearly. You are not hard to love. You just kept offering your heart to people who only valued what they could take from you. And the moment you finally choose yourself, everything changes. And the moment you finally choose yourself, everything changes. Sometimes the people who break you are the same people who taught you how strong you had to become. I lost a family, but I found my self-respect. And honestly, that was worth more than the house, the money, or the revenge ever could be. If this story hit you emotionally, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. And remember, never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your peace.